Hi, and welcome to Asteria's Convos, where we are community, building the future. I'm your host, Asteria Elzea, hosting from land currently known as Los Angeles that has been tended for thousands of years by the Tongva and Chumash peoples. I owe everything I am to lands in the traditional territories of the Sauk and Fox nations. I acknowledge these ancestral tenders as a truth practice and reminder of the violence in our shared history, which has privileged myself and my farmer ancestors. Other identities I lead with are white, gender nonconforming, bisexual, and polyamorous. I'm newly discovered neurodivergent. I have CPTSD, severe generalized anxiety, and am chronically ill with Ehlers-Danlos. I've trained in connection and community building with Desiree Attaway, Beautiful You Coaching Academy, and in Carmen Spaniola's attachment-based, trauma-informed facilitation method. I have a work history in special events and as a stagehand. Plus, I'm a certified data analyst and practicing witch. I hope to explore all these topics and more on Asteria's Convos. So here we go. Hi, and welcome to Asteria's Convos, where we're community building the future. I'm going to have our guest introduce herself. Who are you, your name and pronouns, and what identities do you lead with? And I'm just going to light our candle. Sorry, there's a bunch of rattling.
Hi, Asteria.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So, my name is Bureen, and I use they, she pronouns. And identities I lead with. Oh my gosh. Off the top, I thought long and hard about this question because I wrestle with identities a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think identities are often how we are perceived
Sure.
and how we are perceived within a very specific framework, some
Hmm.
rules and regulations that we've agreed upon as people in a specific culture, time and place. So I think about that a lot. And I generally am somebody who's trying to release a lot of identity and a lot of identification, or maybe more specifically, over identification.
Sure.
But the identities that first came to me when I thought of the question, when I heard the question, were sister, friend, daughter, auntie to a most perfect little boy, healer, witch, and mystic, and artist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are really good identities. I love that you included auntie in
Hmm.
there. That's obviously so important to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really important for kids to have allo parents.
Hmm.
Yeah. What's your work in the world?
Well, my day job, as it were. No, it's more than a day job. I do think of it as a calling, but I work as a professor. I work at a university in New York City, and I teach writing,
Hmm.
mostly to first and second year students, sometimes juniors. But yeah, so I'm a writing professor, writing and literature. I also have a very small nascent healing practice. I'm a certified breathwork and Reiki practitioner, and writing, of course, which I said last, but is my foremost practice and what I want to do in the world.
Okay. First, I have questions about what you do, which is teaching. What kind of literature and writing do you teach?
I teach in the first year writing program, and generally those courses they're writing courses. So maybe you might think of them as composition courses, although at the new school where I teach, they are sort of hybrid composition creative writing.
Okay, cool.
And professors really get to teach whatever they're interested in, really. The name of the game is sort of to get students interested and excited about writing, and the subject
Hmm.
matter isn't as important. So for me, that varies. So, you know, creative writing for sure. Nonfiction is my bag,
Hmm.
essay, memoir. And I'm also really interested in other scholarly fields, post-colonialism, post-colonialism, decolonization, which is, I think, where we're at now. And that feels really new and fresh and interesting to bring to the classroom and bring to students. Yeah, I'm also interested in pop culture,
Yeah.
thinking about different ways of digesting and being with pop culture and elevating it to something worth thinking and considering on a serious level. I think oftentimes, pop culture is sort of poo-pooed as like frivolous
And just for the masses, like
and just
that's a
for the
bad
eggs.
thing.
Exactly. But I think, what I often say to my students is I think if you were to take a slice of our lives, January 26th, 2025,
Hmm.
and put it in a time capsule and have some aliens look at it in 100 years, they would have a sense of who we were as people, what our values were, what
Yeah.
we believe in based on what we're watching, what we're reading, what we're listening to, what we're talking about, right? So pop culture is important. So yeah, I have a little sort of pop culture
Yeah. I
thing.
am very into pop culture and pop music, and I really appreciate like it reflects culture and can influence culture at the same time. So that's very cool. Also, I'm excited by the idea that you get to bring decolonization to your work.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then what do you write for yourself or for the
Yeah.
world?
I am working on my first book. I have been for a long time. It's a memoir, and I've learned that these things sort of take the time they're going to take, especially memoir.
Hmm.
And I was young when I started writing it, and I think, yeah, it's sort of like a slow burn. It's like having something on the stove. It's like on a low flame, and you're just watching it cook and develop. So working on that primarily, and yeah, other things too, essays mostly that I'm working on that I'm hoping to put out into the world. I also have a very new Substack, which I'm hoping will be a place where I can have more writing practice and
Hmm.
connect and build community around the things that I'm interested in. All of it very nascent, but feeling very generative at this point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very new, very growing.
Yeah.
How are you building community?
Man, this is such a good question. The immediate thing that comes to mind is the way I wasn't or haven't been.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
I guess I guess what I should say too is that at this time in the world, I am more consciously thinking about what community means and
Yeah.
how I want to build it. And it has two phases. There's a sort of like external, if you will, phase, and there's the internal, which is a sort of reflection of the personal growth and healing I've been doing
Yeah.
over the last number of years. So, you know, I'm admittedly a recovered, I'm going to be careful with my words, a recovered people pleaser. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, and what that meant in the past for my community, right,
Right.
was that it wasn't always community that was in balance. It wasn't always community that fed me, that saw me,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so much of what I've been healing these last number of years has been doing that work. And so, both personally, my friendships have shifted and what I've needed and desired in friendship. and relationship in general has shifted. And I think that seeps into the deep thinking I'm doing now about what does community look like and what is my capacity in service to collective community,
Yeah,
which is what we need right now. Community is the name of the game
it
in
is.
order for us to usher in and usher out, right? What is leaving and what is coming. So for me, it's about being very conscious about having places where I am of service. I think of my teaching
Hmm.
as service work and community building with
Yes,
my
definitely.
students. Each class, each semester, I get to build a little community with a group of students.
Yeah,
Um,
the amount of impact you can have on students is like
yeah,
world changing, obviously.
yeah, 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 and also I'm very deep in thought about my work and my healing work and how that can be community building.
Well, and you're very giving time to things.
Mhm.
I'm hearing that from you, that
Yeah.
you are giving yourself the time to be more internal and to be in deep thought. And
Yes.
just same as you talked about your memoir, how it's a slow burn over time.
Hmm.
And I think that's pretty beautiful because our world really wants to rush through things.
Hmm.
And it's such a resistance to the overarching ideology to give things the time that they take.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I think this idea of slowness, slowing down, of thinking through, feeling through
Yeah.
is such an important practice and an antidote to, yeah, where we've been for a little while now, which is a patriarchal, capitalistic, oppressive system that doesn't
Mhm.
allow us to rest, that requires us to be perfect, that requires us to have answers for everything. And I think there's a real opportunity now as our world is transitioning
Mhm.
in many ways. I think even in the spaces with really great intentions, we often employ colonial and capitalistic tools. That is, we need to fix something. We need to have an answer for something. We need to, right? Rather than
Yeah.
just sitting with something and letting it organically do its thing. So for me, man, it's been such a real practice in my own life of battling my own type A, needing to know. I mean, a perfect example is sort of this in between place of my teaching and my healing work, which I used to think of as being quite separate. And for a while there, I was sort of, bewildered about who am I? What am I going to do? How am I going to put these things together? And it's like, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything. Just be the things. So I think I am definitely in this practice of this deliberate slowness and not needing to rush into answers so quickly.
Yeah. How did you find to put your healing and teaching together or keep them separate? Just separate?
Yeah, I think I'm in transition, to be honest.
Mhm.
I mean, I think in my healing work, there's an element of teaching, and I do
Yeah.
think that will expand. I think eventually those things will sort of blend. But also in the classroom, I'm allowing some of that stuff to seep into my classroom. So students who have gone through my classes hear me talk about energy and spirit and meditation. I use that language, you know, one of my sort of like, I don't want to say goals, but yeah, one of my things is like, let's just make all this normal. Let's
Mhm.
normalize spirit. Let's normalize understanding energy and spirituality. And so I do allow them to see that took time, but I do allow them the two things to inform the two lives, as it were, to
Each
inform one
other.
another. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
hmm hmm
Yeah. And how are you looking towards the future with your actions?
Oh my goodness. Well, I sort of have a complicated question. Well, maybe not complicated answer, but I think the key for me in that regard, and looking to the future, is this way of being that both is firmly rooted in the present, but
Hmm.
is dreaming and imagining into the future.
Yes.
I really resist the idea of looking to the future, or planning for the future. And look, I think the truth of the matter is we are in the midst of systems falling
Hmm.
and the world as we know it collapsing.
Yes.
And I think it behooves us to tend to that more directly and think about that tending as a way of securing a future, whatever future that's going to be. So for me, it's really about presentness. It's about recommitting to earth stewardship and reconnecting with the earth and the land. It means slowing down. It means resting. It means divesting from systems of oppression, the ones that reside within me as well as the ones that are outside of me.
Hmm.
It means being in nature more. It
Yeah.
means, it's so funny. I have these weird, which I don't know, maybe I shouldn't sort of say out loud, but I have these moments. People talk about glimmers, when you're like,
Yeah.
you'll just be standing on the street corner, or, you get a glimmer. I have been having that probably for the last year for sure, maybe 2 years, of deep moments of nostalgia. It'll just hit me. So I'll just be out. I'll be in a coffee shop having a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden a wave of nostalgia hits me, and I look around and I feel such deep gratitude for this cute coffee shop. And, you know,
Yes. Me too.
like, I have these, right? And I don't know what they mean, but I have a sense that it is a kind of visioning or seeing something that something's shifting and changing. And it's a kind of like, oh wait, like ground here and be grateful for this beautiful moment, whatever it is, whether it's me standing on a street corner in New York City downtown. Downtown always has this amazing energy, and often I'm standing on the corner and I'm just like, oh, New York.
Yeah.
But little moments like that where I'm just really, yeah, trying to just be very present and grateful.
I'm hearing your values come out,
Mhm,
and it your values are rest and resisting. And
mhm.
how did you get so clear on that?
Oh man. Well, I would say it's a combination of things.
Mhm.
There's a big part of it that I probably is would be a long sort of detailing of my life experiences and childhood and what I've healed and trauma and all that stuff,
Sure.
right? And then there's a part of it that I just don't know. I can't put to words how I know. Like I
Hmm.
can't, right? It's just what I know.
Hmm.
I do feel have always felt since I was a child pretty you know, a teacher of mine said to me once, "Oh, you were one of those kids who could read the weather." That's what he said. You could read the weather. I was a pretty sensitive kid
Hmm.
and felt pretty connected as very connected to animals, really connected to tree. Even now, I regularly talk and hug trees. Um,
Yeah.
and
They're good friends.
yes, they're amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
they're amazing. And some of that sort of went away into my teen years, 20s, right? And then I sort of have come back to a lot of and rediscovering and reconnecting to those parts of me. And I have a very, very deep spiritual practice and a, very important and deep relationship with guides and which is deepening and I inherently trust the universe and I check in with the universe, with source, spirit on everything.
Hmm.
And I think that connection and that relationship, that deepening connection and relationship has sort of reminded me, right, of what's true.
Yeah.
And I often say like there aren't many things that are capital T true. Most things are lowercase t true. Capital T true is the fact that we are made of source, the fact that we are source energy, the fact that we are human and divine, that those things, that's capital T true
Yeah.
for everyone, whether that's your language or not. And the beautiful thing about the universe is that you actually don't have to believe it or trust it to benefit from the beautiful love and care of the universe. That's the magic of it all, right?
Right.
And so I think there's so much that I don't know. In fact, part of what I love about getting older is that you realize you just really you don't know nothing. It's like,
Hmm.
and I love that. I love being
Yeah.
like, I don't know nothing. It's so freeing. It's such a radical, like beginner mind, radical place to be in a culture that says you have to know everything.
Yeah.
I mean, especially as women, I'm a woman of color. I'm a queer woman of color. It's
Yeah.
like the thing, the pile upon piles of things that I need to know, that I need to be good at, that I need to study, the degrees I need to get, the sort of, I mean, right?
Yep.
So this really empowered place of just being like, I don't, I don't know anything, and I'm just going to turn it all over to source and universe and
I,
be a student, right?
yeah, I really love that you are sitting here in front of me and nobody can see you, but you've got this whole wall of books behind you and you're a professor. And what you do for a career is, you know, read and know about things and nonfiction and writing. And then you're also here like, I don't know anything. And that's great. And I'm
Yeah.
going to keep on keeping on with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, you know, I often say this to my students at the beginning of the semester, and I say this to clients too.
Hmm.
When clients come to me and I say, I'm just like a facilitator here, right? And
Hmm.
we're learning together. And I say to my students, sure, they've hired me to teach you. I have some things to teach you, of course. And mostly we're going to learn together in community. And mostly we're all going to find out that we know more than we think. And also that it's okay to ask a lot of questions and it's okay to not have answers and it's okay to have a half thought that you want to say out loud and put into the space and think about it together with your community. Like all of that is, yeah, how amazing will it be when we've been freed of some of these binds that we've consciously or unconsciously agreed to that have kept us small and scared.
Hmm.
And that is so much of my work in this incarnation.
Hmm. So I have a partner
Yeah.
who has all the audacity to ask any question that we ever have. And so he'll
Hmm.
ask people who are just anything because he's like, it doesn't hurt to ask. And
Yeah.
it's a true embodiment of that. And that way of being for him has modeled to me that I can ask for stuff.
Mhm.
And that it's not a problem. I'm not weird. I'm not like, I
Mhm.
don't need to know. Like, I knew logically I didn't need to know everything, but like, people come to your house and they do work, and it's okay if you ask them questions about the work they're doing,
Yeah.
or like just simple things like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, my dad recently said to me that he's done growing and changing.
Mm.
It's like, wow, I can't imagine that being where I want to be in my life. I would
Yeah.
love to keep growing through my 90s or however long I live.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Forever.
forever.
Forever. I mean, I think I didn't say this when you asked about the identities, but I also identify as someone who's insatiably curious
Yeah.
and yeah, growing and changing forever. Change is not easy. It can be challenging and confronting, but oh, what a magical place to be. And I think to your point about the questions, when you were talking about it, it just reminded me of children, like my nephew who's 5, almost
Mhm.
6, who just asks a gazillion questions all the time. He's just like question after question. It's just like, yeah, he never thinks like, oh, I shouldn't. Thank God he hasn't learned that yet, that he can't ask, that
Well,
he,
and he doesn't know the things. So he's not asking the questions to be annoying. He's just like,
hmm
he's asking the questions to learn about his world. And we're all
yes,
asking the questions to learn
yes.
about our world.
hmm
And being willing to acknowledge that you don't know everything or don't know anything
hmm
helps you keep learning about the world and being open to other people, other experiences, other perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as well, the perhaps natural byproduct of that can be unlearning,
Yeah.
you know? I think,
Hmm.
a very powerful place to be is to question what you think you know
Yeah.
and why you know it or why you think you know it. I had a very lovely practitioner who challenged me that way, because he would say things like, well, you think you know that, but you don't know how you know that. Like, how do you know
Hmm.
how you learned that? Like, how did you,
Yeah.
you know? And it really helped me sort of live in that sort of beautiful gray world of what you know, what you don't know, what you might know, what you won't ever know. Like also giving up the sort of
Yes.
giving into the mystery as well of what we don't know. And that we don't need to know everything. We don't need to put words to everything. All of that is
All of
a
that.
fun place to be.
Yeah. I was watching Labyrinth the other day, which has been one
Mhm.
of my favorite movies since fifth grade.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is about questioning what you know. Just
Yes.
the whole movie. They're like, and what's fair and what's not fair and what's your basis for comparison.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just felt I was like, oh, this is why I don't respect authority figures, the Goblin King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you just think about the endless possibilities of options,
Hmm.
of possibilities, I mean, it makes the world far more interesting.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think about in our iteration, in our version of reality right now, that feels really scary. I mean, so much of what's happening in the world now is fear of the unknown,
Yes.
you know,
And fear in general.
and fear in general.
Hmm.
Fear in general. We at some point we ingested, somebody swallowed a pill or something of like
Of
fear,
fear
and it just
infected.
infested us. I think we're gonna move out of that. I
Yeah.
think we've been in it for a little while. I think we're going to move out of it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think, yeah, just the infinite possibilities can be fun, and we don't have to fear it, you
Yeah.
know. And perhaps we will always as humans. I don't know, maybe that's something that's inherent to being human. Okay, so what does it mean to take the fear along anyway, right? I think, yeah, I really have been enjoying opening up to that
Yeah.
and learning.
Well,
Yeah,
and
just being
the
open.
idea of what if we take the fear along anyway?
Hmm.
We're those of us who are working to be more open
Yeah,
are still taking fear
for sure.
along with us. There's
Yeah,
still anxiety. There's still all the like, what if nobody shows up to my party feelings, or what if I do it
sure.
wrong, or what if, but the willingness to work around that fear or acknowledge that it's there, but do a new thing anyway,
Yeah,
or question things anyway.
yeah, yeah. I think in my own life, the the feeling of being deeply connected and grounded, the feeling of being tapped into or connected to the parts of me that are divine, my higher self, source, whatever you want to call it, having more experience with what that feels like bodily,
Hmm.
it that begins to overpower the fear. And so in many ways, it's like I've had a taste of, ooh, this is what it feels like for my heart to be cracked wide open. This is what it feels like for me to be trusting and connecting with the universe and knowing that I'm taken care of, that the universe has so much love for me, that the universe is rooting for me no matter what, is on my side. I think the more I tapped into that, the more I cultivated that, the stronger and more empowered I felt in the face of fear. And and now it kind of feels like I'm going to fight for that feeling. I'm going to fight for that no matter how scared I am to change, to give something up, to do something new, to do something scary. That feeling of heart cracked open, love connected to the universe is such a good feeling that I'm going to fight for that. I mean, for me in my own life, I think about what it took for me to be here. My family is from Haiti.
Hmm.
My parents were immigrants to this country. They came from a country that was colonized,
Yeah.
brutalized.
Brutalized.
They come from people who were taken from their original lands. And right. So it's like, it's in me to fight for my life. Right.
Yeah.
And, and I'm going to try to do that as best I can in spite of the fear, in spite of all that's been sort of foisted on me. And, to really cultivate a, a spiritual foundation has made that a lot easier,
Hmm.
and having a taste of how good that feels. I think often, I mean, it's one of the things I think about in my own healing practice when I'm sitting with people. My only sort of desire is to have them connect with themselves, to feel that. Because once you feel that, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like once you connect to your divinity, your heart, it's it's this thing that you can't unsee it, you can't unfeel it, and it changes you.
Yeah.
And you begin to move through your life in a different way, and you begin to move through all the things in your life, whatever challenges you have in a different way. And it's not, we're going to have challenges. We are we're on the planet. Earth is, it's like a playground of,
Of challenge.
of challenges. That's what it's meant to be. One of my teachers said, you wanted to be here. You were really excited to incarnate and come down here. And I was like, really? Was I? Because I don't know.
Because that seems wrong.
That seems like I didn't choose this. I don't know. But I think that's been really, I mean, that idea has been really helpful to know that, like, it's not that the challenges and the hardships go away, because it's part of it, but that the approach is different. There's a more empowered, less alone, right, stronger way of moving through the world. And it really shifts, I think, at least for me. And I think I've
I think
seen it
that,
happen with clients.
yeah, that feeling of cracked openness or connection, also feels like connection to my center for me. And
Hmm.
like I can stand back and up and I am sure. It feels like being sure. I
Yes.
am sure that this is the right choice. Sure that I can trust doing this.
Hmm.
I'm sure I shouldn't make plans on that day. I don't know why, but I'm sure of it.
Hmm.
And I wish that sureness for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for my
Yeah.
past self.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Those past selves.
Yeah.
Those past selves. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That assuredness that you're, and even the assuredness that you're okay no matter what,
Hmm.
that almost it doesn't matter what decision you make, that it doesn't matter. You're okay. You're good. You're
Yeah.
okay. You're deserving. You're worthy. You have a right to be here. You have a right to be loved. You have a right to exist. And it doesn't matter. You know, you choose A doesn't work out, choose B. All right.
Yeah.
You
Maybe,
know?
well, and maybe A is working out for you in a different way that you won't recognize.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not, but you'll just do something else. It's going
Yeah.
to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the playfulness, I mean, so much of what I've been thinking about too for myself is more play, you know,
Yeah.
because, I can be serious sometimes.
You,
And I think, yeah, like just be like, it's not that serious. It's really not.
yeah.
Like, it's all okay. It really is. And I think for me, that's been, ooh, it's not how I grew up. I mean, I'm first generation, immigrant. Like, come on. I grew up, every decision is life or death,
Yeah.
right? Like, you better
Yeah.
get straight A's because you better blah, blah, blah. And I get it, right? I,
Right.
I get it. I get why my parents, for them, it was. I, you
Right.
know, And so I understand it. But I think for me, so much of my healing is about releasing a lot of that, you know? And a lot of it I think of as sort of like remnants of coloniality, right? The sort of needing to be perfect and good and smart and studious and the
Yeah.
best and straight A's and blah, 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 right?
And this is a merit based life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
You
not.
know? And it's one way of being, sure.
Sure.
But I think for me, the healing has been really to release a lot of those binds
Yeah.
that, were passed on to me consciously and unconsciously. And obviously our parents, they do their best. They really do. And sometimes it's not enough, right? Or sometimes it's harmful. So I think for me, being empowered enough to say, "Ooh, like this is what was given to me, and this is what I'm going to pick up and keep going with, and this is what I'm going to just leave right here."
Yeah.
And and so a lot of that is about fun and trust and knowing that I'm worthy no matter what. That truly, if I decided to just sleep on my couch for the rest of my life and do nothing, I would still be worthy.
Yeah. And like the fun and the play, you can't dream without the fun and the play and the
Oh my,
rest.
oh my gosh, come on. Right?
Right.
Yeah,
There's gotta
impossible
be that playfulness for the imagination to work,
for sure.
to
And
dream.
and look, this it's no accident that capitalism asks us to not rest,
Right.
to work all the time.
hmm We know people aren't
Um,
more productive than 4 hours a day, but we make them work eight hours a day
mhm,
just
mhm.
to be as exhausted as possible.
Yeah, 8 hours minimum,
Minimum.
minimum,
Yeah.
right? Most people are working far more.
Yeah. I
I mean, this
remember
is why.
earlier in my 20s when I was like, I don't know, I feel like I just want to work 4 hours a day. And I was
Mm,
like, does that make me really, really lazy? Does that
mm,
mean I'm like not participating in culture?
mm.
And then here I am like a decade later. Like, no, that doesn't make you lazy. That makes you listening to your body.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and of course, you know, I've been thinking a lot too about words and what they mean, and how do we take words back or change their meaning. So I think a lot
Yeah.
about what we mean by labor and what we mean by work. I
Yeah.
mean, we know for sure. I know for sure I didn't come to this planet to labor. Like that.
Right.
That's not why we're here.
Darling, I
Right?
do not dream of labor.
No, no. We
No.
it's that is not why we're here. I am
Yeah.
100% certain of that.
Yeah.
And I think the labor is a way to dehumanize us. And I would say further to separate us from our divinity and from our magic.
Yeah.
Our divinity is where all the creativity is, the imagination, which I often say to clients. Sometimes I'm taking a client through a journey and I'll say, imagine. And they're like, I don't have a good imagination. I don't know. And I'll
Yeah.
say, every human being has an imagination. Your imagination is actually a portal. It's
Yeah.
a portal to other worlds, the portal to other realities. It's actually a tool. Our imagination is not some fake sort of thing that we're like, oh, I imagined. It's like, no, it's a real thing that you can use, right? And so to me, it makes sense then that we live in a culture that insists on squashing that.
Yeah.
A culture that insists on making you so tired that you can't possibly imagine a way out of something or a way to do something differently or a different path for your life. You can't possibly imagine because you're too tired because you've
Right.
got two jobs, you've got three jobs, you've got one income and all the things, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's why rest is so radical.
Yeah.
It's why I am, there's a big movement now, not like maybe not a big movement, but I'm seeing a lot of chatter online about in this time, in this moment we're in, given where we are politically, where the United States is and all of that, sort
hmm
of how much more important it is to rest.
Right.
And sometimes that causes sort of divisive, people have feelings about that in especially in communities that are in activist communities, right? Uh,
Mm,
that one form of activism is to just divest from all of that and just rest and just be like, let it all sort of play out, right?
mm.
And yeah, I think it's a conversation worth having. So I think sometimes in the activist spaces, we activist with capitalistic tools.
Yes.
That is to say,
Okay.
we don't rest. That is to say, we're on the streets till we're tired. We haven't eaten. We haven't taken a nap. We haven't bathed. We haven't taken a break.
Right.
We need to post 24/7. We don't.
No, we don't.
We don't.
There's several books I want to mention just
Y-
in, yeah.
Yes.
So the Nap Ministry, which is
Yes.
the Instagram, Trisha Hersey's
Yes.
book,
Mhm.
Rest is Resistance, a
Yes.
manifesto. And then she has the second one, We Will Rest, The Art of
Mhm.
Escape.
Yes.
So I've been following her for almost a decade, and Trisha Hersey's work is so great. and powerful and has been so inspiring to me as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then Emergent Strategy, the whole series by Adrienne Marie Brown.
Yes, amazing.
Yeah, so much talk in there about the activism and how we have to be generative and how we have to be able to do it without capitalism tools.
Yes,
So we need to be able to slow down and acknowledge what ways we're bringing those hierarchies into the activism that we're doing.
yes.
And then also Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which is supposedly a creative writing book. But with all we've talked about with imagination and curiosity,
Yes.
every time that I've read Big Magic, and I always listen to the audiobook, it changes my life.
Yeah.
Just I get something new out of it about how to be curious or how to work with my inspiration or
Hmm.
whatever. And so I just want to say those three authors and topics really resonate with me with what we've talked about right now.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning those. I love all of those books. I love Elizabeth Gilbert
Yeah.
and Adrienne Marie Brown and Tricia Hersey. I think such important invitations for us
Yeah.
to reconsider what we think we know and reconsider how we hospice this collapse. I think that's really,
How we
really
deaf doula it.
yes.
Yeah.
That is where we're at. And honestly, I think for me, as I've been really thinking about my work in these next moments, next
Hmm.
coming months or years, and rethinking about my practice, both my writing practice and my practice with people, with humans, I think a lot about how do we appropriately doula this moment, hospice, this moment.
Hmm.
And I think I think about hospice workers and how reverent they are, how assured they are, how a hospice nurse will simultaneously take the reins and control of a situation with the utmost respect and compassion.
Yes.
It's a gift, really.
Hmm.
And I think these systems that are falling, and they are falling,
Hmm.
we must grieve them. I know that there is a let's burn it down, capitalism sucks, patriarchy sucks. Yes. And there's an important process in the midst of that, in the grief work, that I think we sometimes miss in the West, especially. We don't have active grieving practices.
We don't.
So things happen. And I mean, I think about the pandemic. We
Yeah.
had this huge rupture, this huge time of fear, death, isolation, loss. And rather than take a moment to grieve it, to honor it, we just sort of were like, let's go back to restaurants and shops and bars and, you know,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that. And wow, what a moment
Of collective grief.
of collective grief. Because what the grief allows is an alchemation process that allows you to look at what you've lost, honor it, and give it space to transform into something else. And when we don't do that, I think we don't alchemize,
Yeah.
and I think we miss opportunities for growth and deepening. So I think while these systems are falling, we should mourn them. We should take notes. We should grieve. We should hospice. And there are things, I think, admittedly, that are parts of these systems that I think we will miss. You know what I mean? It's like, sure, I'm all for capitalism going away. And if I'm being real, I have to be like, ooh, but life might change and there are some things I might actually miss, and I think that's going to take us by surprise. What I think is
Right.
going to happen is I
Yeah.
think we're going to be like, let's burn it down, decolonize. And then it's going to be like, well, actually life is going to be like this, and you're going to be like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't I didn't want to do all, you know, like I think we have to slow down and
And acknowledge the transition.
acknowledge the transition, grieve the transition, grieve who we were, grieve our complacency, our apathy,
Also,
grieve.
grieving for like who we wanted to be, who we were
Yes,
promised we could be, for
yes,
who,
yes.
like what we wanted from the systems and dreamed of from the systems that we never
All
got.
of it, all of it,
Yeah.
all of it. And I think properly grieving will allow us to be fertile and ready for the new world, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, like rich, dark earth that's been fertilized.
Yes. Yes. It's a process that I think we skip. We
Yeah.
miss. You know, it's interesting after the election, the day after the election, I purposely had a day at home. I was really off of media news and I just wanted to just be quiet and with myself. And I was not, surprised. In
Right.
fact, I'd been telling friends for 4 years that that would happen. And they were like, you're crazy. It's not going to happen. And it's
I've been
funny.
saying it for a while too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. I plugged into two communities that day. One was like a somatics, group. And the other was a group of writers, like a writing collective. And
Mhm.
it was really interesting to see the two reactions. The somatic group, we just were like, let's just be in your body. What's in your body now? What are you
Yeah.
feeling? Where's the energy? What feels tight? Let's give that some breath.
Yeah.
What feels hard, et cetera, et cetera. And I had that in the morning, thankfully. And then in the evening I joined the writing collective and it was so interesting because in that group, everyone was really eager to be like, what do we do? Let's get together. We gotta rally, and all of it with
You
wonderful
can't,
intentions. But I was like, y'all, we're not, let's just pause.
yeah.
That right there is a capitalistic colonial way of doing things that you need to rush to fix something. There's nothing to fix here. At this moment, let's just be with the feelings, all the feelings.
Yeah. On election day, I, I voted and I was in community at first with some people and I triggered some people by saying that I was chillin'.
Mm-hmm.
And what I meant by that was that I'm choosing to protect my peace. I've voted. I've done what I can.
Mm-hmm.
I can't like do anything further at this point, and it's out of my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to choose not to be anxious about what's happening. I
Yeah.
chose to go to a garden and be outdoors with my best friend and her daughter and focus my time and my connection on being present, on being connected to the earth,
Mm-hmm.
on chilling, but not
Yeah.
like I don't care,
Yes. Of
but
course.
like
Yeah.
not like I couldn't understand what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
but like to it's more important to take care of myself than to freak out.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. No, and I think, look, I think we are all negotiating consciously and unconsciously our relationship to capitalism,
Hmm.
colonial, colonialism, and all the things,
Hmm.
you know? And so, yeah, it makes sense that some people would be bothered by your your choice to take care of yourself, right? And I think sometimes yeah, in my friend groups and groups with, places with colleagues, even, there's often some friction
Hmm.
around my approach to, you know, dealing with the things we don't like that we want to change that others don't agree with. And I think mostly I want to divest from using capitalistic tools for social change and social progress.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in being rushed. I'm not interested in, you know, being on emails at 11 o'clock at night because we're trying to have a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning the next day. Like, no,
No.
I'm, it's not something I'm interested in doing. And, and I think, yeah, I think there's some growing pains,
Hmm.
around that as we move through all these different changes and transitions in the world as we are learning and unlearning
Yeah.
ways of being. And so, yeah, I mean, I hear you. I mean, it's funny because in some of my circles, especially the sort of my folks who are more spiritual leaning, I mean, there's someone I know who's just her idea is to just completely opt out of this timeline. She's like, I'm opting into a different timeline. And that to me is really sort of interesting. I think again, it it brings up these questions, which I think are worth airing and talking about how we are participating, how we are using our energy, what are we using our energy for, and and I don't think there's one answer. I think that's the beauty
Yeah.
of and magic of the world. There isn't one answer, and actually, I think everyone can show up as they need to show up. I don't think we need, you know, full consensus of everybody on the planet about how to do things. I think we can all sort of do things
We
as
can
we
do things
need them.
separately and they can still be good. Like
Yes.
one of the books I also read this year is Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or
Yes.
Community by Martin Luther King Jr. And he talks a lot in there about how the civil rights movement needed everybody. It needed the peaceful protests and it needed the violent protest.
Yes.
And you can disagree on the way to do things. And those ways can both be valid or multiply be
For
valid.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I think as individuals, I mean, I'm always going to add the spiritual lens to it. It's
Right.
kind of just how I see the world.
Yeah.
So while we are part of a collective, each individual is coming and has a specific soul contract.
Hmm.
So each individual is working out, for lack of better terms, working out their own stuff. That's
Yeah.
really nobody else's business.
Hmm.
You know, I keep joking and saying, "Oh, I'm going to write like a decolonization manifesto, and like number one is going to be minding your business," right? It's like
Yeah.
it's and I mean that to say to respect that each person's on their journey and has stuff they're working out on their own and needs to work out their stuff as they need to work it out,
Right.
and trusting that the beauty and the divinity and the exactness, the perfectness of the universe means that we're going to get to where we need to get to. And we don't have to worry about the how. We
Yeah.
don't have to worry about the how.
Hmm.
That's already ordained. The how is already ordained. It's just like, are you doing your individual soul work?
Are
That's
you willing?
the key. Are you willing? Yeah. Are
Yeah.
you ready to
Yeah.
do your individual soul work, trusting that your soul work positively, for lack of a better word, feeds into the collective, and then
Hmm.
sort of like as a collective going where we're supposed to be going. I think part of what the problem is that we're too busy minding other people's business
Yes.
and then projecting our stuff
Yes.
onto, right? So it's it's murky in the
Hmm.
energetically. It's murky, but I think we're once I do believe that that's all going to get better, that we're going to become more aware, some of us, not all of us, and fine tune, have more discernment around our individual work and soul work and understanding how that feeds the collective
Yeah.
and why the individual work is so important for the collective. I think often too, I've heard people say things like, well, it's not about individual work, it's about community, not individual. But, they're
Those go
interconnected.
together.
They're
Yeah.
inextricably linked.
Yeah.
So I think awareness of community is important, but one needs to be doing one's soul work, right? With the awareness that that soul work contributes to the collective and understanding their interconnectedness. So that it's actually super important for you to do your soul work because of the collective, because you matter to the collective, actually. It's even more, you're not just doing your soul work for you, you're doing your soul work for the collective, for the planet,
I
for the
think it,
all, you know?
yes, what you're saying about soul work is so, so important. And also acknowledging that soul work is likely not going to, it's not going to look like what capitalism would tell you work looks like. It's
Yep,
going to be, my
100%.
soul work is being there for people while they're like going through big transitions in their life, while they're going through a portal.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
assume it's going to be for people, being there for people while they go through this portal.
Yep,
That's not something I can get paid for. Or,
yep,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. It doesn't fit into a like capitalist work framework.
Mm-mm,
No.
mm-mm. No. And I think too, to your point, we have to be, and I love that you gave that example, because I think what it makes me think of is that we have to be willing to do our soul work and trust
And trust.
that the paid, and I'm putting that in quotes, whatever that looks like, comes through. In this moment, in this iteration of our reality, we all agreed to capitalism, right?
Hmm.
We agreed to exchange money, paper. We agreed to charge for goods. We agreed to pay salaries, blah, blah, blah. And I think like, you know, the 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 fatigue and the oppression keeps us from imagining a different way. We
Hmm.
think it will always be that it's like, oh, you have a job and you get a paycheck and you, right? And no, capitalism is just one system. And clearly it it's harmful,
Yeah.
to put it
Well,
lightly.
it's
So
also the
can we
system that we were
reimagine?
raised in and the system that they told us had to be.
Yep.
And that's been ingrained in us for like
Yep.
500 years.
Yep.
And so that's going to be hard.
For sure. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Is it? Is
Yeah.
it? And the truth is, I think I don't know that most of us will be able to let it go. You know what I mean? Like I actually think few of us will really truly be able to let it go. I think many of us will bear down and say, no, 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 like it's too scary to let go of any other possibility. But I think the idea of trusting, again, it's like not worrying about the how, so that the
Yeah.
duty is to do the soul work, whatever that is. And again,
Mm.
take that out of capitalistic colonial terms. Soul work can be anything. Soul work can be you're a musician, you play in the subway station every day for people as they're commuting or going, right?
Yeah.
Or soul work could be you're a mom. Soul
Yeah.
work could be you're a teacher, right? Soul work is anything, right? And you trust that the how
Comes
of
out.
comes out. The universe takes care of you one way or the other.
Hmm.
And that all we need to worry about is doing the soul work of figuring out why did I come here? What is my soul after?
Yeah.
What am I trying to do? Be what does my soul want to experience? Really, it's about experience. The soul is here to experience something. What am I here
What
to
is it?
experience? And just trusting the how. And you're so right, Asteria. It's so hard. Ooh. I mean, I'm learning that lesson big time now, you know? The
Yeah.
trust, not taking the mental hands off and letting the universe do its thing.
Yeah. Okay. We're a little over time, but what are you here to promote?
Oh my goodness. What am I
It
here
can
for?
be an idea if you want.
Yeah.
It can be an actual thing.
Well, I like the idea of an idea
Yeah.
and a thing. I
And a
mean,
thing.
I will say I think the idea that I want to promote is that we are the thing. It's not my idea. I mean, I don't even know who said it originally, but I'm going to steal it. But I think
Right.
it's appropriate now that we are the thing, the person, the savior, the helper, whatever it is that we need. We are it.
Yeah.
It is not a government. It is not a president. It is not a job. It is
Yeah.
not a partner. It is us. And it behooves us, if we don't know what that is or don't know what that feels like, to get curious about that.
Hmm.
And I'm going to connect it to what I'm here to promote. I don't like that word, but I'm trying to be I'm trying to that's my own thing to resolve that. But what I'm here to promote would be that I am in service to folks in discovery of that,
Hmm.
right? I am in service in my practice. I think I want to be of service of folks who are ready to get curious and to find out who they are and to reconnect with their divine selves and to reconnect with their magic
Yeah. And if people want
and
to
to do that
find
hard work.
your
Yeah.
practice and want to connect with you to reconnect with themselves, how do they do that?
Ugh. Ugh. Well, I am on social media, you know,
Yeah.
love
It's got
hate.
problems.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So so I can be found that I am golden 444. I am golden 444.
Hmm.
That's the easiest place to find me. Although I'm in a transition place with with social
Yeah.
media. But that is a place to find me on Instagram to connect people. Folks can send me a message and we can go from there.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Bureen, for coming on. This has been such a wonderful, powerful conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
Welcome. Thanks for tuning in to Asteria's Convos. You can find the links for this episode in the episode description. You can find me, Asteria Elzea, on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads as at asteria.elzea, and on Blue Sky as at Asteria Elzea. Spell it Asteria dot Elzea. Please leave a review on your favorite podcast hosting service. That's the absolute best way for our community to grow. Remember, your actions create the future. All my love, Asteria Elzea.